1966, a year that will be remembered for a multitude of events, all of which helped to shape our life and times. 1966, a tapestry of people, places, and things. 1966, documenting a kaleidoscope of cause and effect, progress and stalemate, joy and grief, triumph and tragedy.
In 1966, the Vietnam War erupted into a tragedy of epic proportions. Standing firm, Lyndon Johnson explained why in his famous domino theory inaugural address.
We will stay because in Asia and around the world are countries whose independence rests in large measure on confidence in America's word and in America's protection. To yield to force in Vietnam would weaken that confidence, would undermine the independence of many lands, and would whet the appetite of aggression. We would have to fight in one land, and then we'd have to fight in another, or abandon much of Asia to the domination of communism. And we do not intend to abandon Asia to conquest.
South Vietnam became the cornerstone in our battle with communism, and the war intensified to a fever pitch.
Men of the 1st Cavalry Airmobile Division begin their 4th week of Operation White Wing, a vast search and destroy mission 300 miles northeast of Saigon near Bong Son. This particular mission is to take and hold a village near Highway 1. No sooner do the copters leave than the soldiers come under sniper fire. They're pinned down until a call goes out for aerial support and fighter bombers move in. Heavy air strafing quickly cleans out the threat of snipers halting the advance, and it's not long before scouts can report that it's safe once more to advance through the dense jungle. Near the village, men of the 1st Cavalry wipe out Viet Cong fighting a rear guard action. They killed 27 in the advance and took 78 suspects. When the men finally enter the village, they find everything quiet on the surface. The first step in pacification of the settlement will be to move civilians to safer areas, to encampments where they can't be the target of Viet Cong revenge. Under United States and South Vietnamese plans for social and economic reforms, the people will live where it is safe until this area is secured and sufficient farm tools and food made available for them to begin a new life. So far, this operation has been one of the most successful. 789 communists have been killed and 200 captured, and hundreds of civilians have found new security. French President Charles de Gaulle goes to Moscow, urging French-Russian unity to reduce East-West tensions. In the same year, he evicts NATO from France. His decision has vast political, economic, and social significance. Army installations employed thousands of Frenchmen. New locations are found in Belgium, the Netherlands, and West Germany, while NATO's problems are worked out. The future of Florence, Italy will include at least 20 years of repair and restoration following the worst single art catastrophe in the history of man. An unprecedented flood wreaks havoc on this world center of Renaissance art. An international army of volunteers works tirelessly at the monumental task left in the wake of nature's terrible rampage. And a human rampage spreads death and terror across the University of Texas campus. 24-year-old student Charles Whitman goes berserk, shooting from the top of the 28-story tower. Victims are hit at the rate of 1 every 3 minutes. Men, women, children, all are targets. The crazed sniper sends bodies crumpling to the ground everywhere for over an hour. Finally, Whitman is shot dead by Austin police. One afternoon's tragic total, 16 dead, 33 wounded. In Rome, man's ecumenical spirit is demonstrated in this meeting between Pope Paul VI and the Archbishop of Canterbury. The first such meeting in 4 centuries. Mutual esteem is evidenced by the symbolic kiss of peace. The wedding of the year unites 19-year-old Lucy Baines Johnson and Patrick Nugent. The couple first met at a White House party. Later, Pat returns to college, and Lucy becomes an Austin, Texas housewife, hopefully to await the arrival of the president's first grandchild. But all the year's earthly events are eclipsed by America's achievements in space. The The flight of Gemini 8 is under command pilot Neil Armstrong, the first civilian astronaut. And for him and his fellow astronaut David Scott, the 3-day orbit is the most complex yet planned in the U.S. space program. Their schedule calls for docking with the Agena rocket on the 4th orbit, with the link-up to continue throughout the night. Then it is programmed that Scott will stroll in space for more than 2 hours while he sets up radiation devices on the nearby Agena and works with special tools. This to determine how well a man can work in a weightless state. The Agena launch is perfect. Each stage is destined to fire on the button. It climbs like a newly freed bird to its planned orbit 185 miles above the Earth. Meanwhile, the Gemini countdown proceeds without a hitch. Another perfect takeoff. The tens of thousands of workers had occasion to be proud. The Gemini rendezvoused with the Agena on schedule. Just 6 hours and 34 minutes after Scott and Armstrong left Cape Kennedy, they locked in on the Agena, and Armstrong told the ground in triumph, it was a real smoothie. These are the extraordinary movies made by automatic cameras as Gemini 8 sighted the Agena rocket 185 miles above the Earth. It's hard to believe that both craft are traveling at a speed of 17,295 miles an hour. Now the Gemini will move in front of the Agena, turn, and point its nose at the flashing lights that mark the docking aperture. It's a weird sensation. Both spacecraft will pass from sunlight to darkness to sunlight again. In the Gemini window, you can see reflections from inside the capsule. The original programming called for an all-night link-up of the two vehicles and a spacewalk of more than 2 hours for Major Scott. This looked like the smooth as silk curtain raiser for the ambitious flight. The lights in the docking collar and the riding lights on each side give a visible target as Gemini comes closer and closer. In about 9 seconds, you'll see the lights disappear. That's the actual docking. For a half hour, both craft held steady. The astronauts had told the ground everything was very stable. Then, number 8 thruster acts up. A violent oscillation sets in, and Armstrong wrestles the Gemini free with his re-entry rockets. He was ordered down by Mission Control, and the men landed their space vehicle within 2 miles of a target area. They were taken aboard the destroyer Mason within 3 hours. It was a jubilant and happy ending to 3 excruciating hours of suspense after the thruster malfunction.
America was watching the skies as the race to see who would be first on the moon entered its final phase. Sights like these, once the domain of science fiction movies, became commonplace occurrences to the average American. But there was little time for reflection because someone was always right behind us.
After 4 known failures, the Soviet Union has succeeded in putting an observation craft on the moon, a step deemed necessary before a manned landing. The Western world had their first word of the successful probe from an English source, the Jodrell Bank Observatory near Manchester. Here, with the world's largest antenna, they recorded pictures sent out by Lunar 9. The pictures show that the soil is rough-textured and sponge-like with little dust, ideal for landing a manned spacecraft.
Perched atop an Atlas Centaur rocket, Surveyor, loaded with television cameras, is launched at Cape Kennedy. The moon is only 231,000 miles away. The target is an incredibly small 2-by-5 mile area which this craft must hit dead center for best results. Now a critical point in Surveyor's flight, the automatic terminal landing sequence. Retro rocket engines act like air brakes. Surveyor is still guided by radar, while the reverse rockets slow its descent to an amazing 13 feet per second. A first try touchdown as light as a feather. A command from Surveyor Control, Pasadena, California, triggers the craft's TV cameras. And now, our American Earth vehicle sends live television pictures back to the globe 250,000 miles away. This historic picture, in which surveyor photographs itself, clearly shows one of the craft's legs, its footpad and antenna. This close-up shows a 6 by 12-inch moon rock. The moon, the world of the future. A new walking chair designed to give new freedom to children who cannot walk is tested in California. This unusual 8-leg vehicle developed by space engineers can turn in place. Power is supplied by batteries. Climbing a curb is simple for the walker, which can also stride a rough field, sandy beach, step over obstacles, and climb rough slopes of 15 degrees and more at 2 miles an hour. Designer Bill Baldwin has developed moonwalking machines in the past, which led to this application of the vehicle called, because of its appeal to children, Moonwalker. Moonwalker has controls that can be operated by hand, foot, or by the chin, and it's even cooperative when it's taken for a ride. With Moonwalker, the term shut-in becomes obsolete, and handicapped children are given new hope and mobility. You are looking at the preliminary version of an 18-foot-high walking machine called a pedipulator. It's being developed in Schenectady for the U.S. Army to be used across rugged terrain. Using special foot movements, the machine's operator determines its forward and backward tilting motion. Looks like fun, doesn't it? This particular model has hip and ankle joints and operates much like the skeleton of a mechanical giant. Final models will actually be able to take giant steps, but this one has its feet anchored to the floor. In its final design, the machine will be able to move about freely and may even be equipped with arms. Man, given the strength and mobility of a giant in a machine that makes science fiction a part of everyday life. Should we keep calm or head for the hills? Paris designer Jacques Estrel unveils his fashions for next summer, and believe you me, he's way out there. He throws in an extra skirt with a slacks outfit, but otherwise, Monsieur Estrel is hitting Papa's pocketbook in the bullseye. Yes, he's a great believer in pop art, Pop, and he believes in getting Madame out of the kitchen, utensils and all. Wonder she wears those kooky glasses. Come on, let's not bring back the gay 90s bathing costumes. Does he hope to collar the market with this? Possibly Jacques Estrel's greatest contribution to a busy lady's welfare is the combination afternoon and evening dress. A hidden suspension system, patent pending, drops the skirt as the clock strikes 5. Can you imagine a June bride blossoming forth in this? Summer madness is upon us. Challenging Paris, New York, and Hollywood, Budapest is staging its own fashion show, a revelation that communist women are becoming style conscious. Here's really something, a dress with a peekaboo hip. Neat. Hungary is famed for its beautiful women, and these lovely models furnish ample proof. This three-piece suit and its wearer could win admiration on any boulevard. In the whole world of fashion, geometric figures are ruling, and Hungary goes along with the crowd. The women behind the Iron Curtain come out to take a pretty bow. At Miami Beach, the annual search for the most beautiful girl in the United States goes into its final moments as the 49 Miss USA contestants parade before the judges in costumes representing their states. This is the 15th year of the pageant, and the girls look so lovely, the judges' job will be difficult indeed. Of course, the contest really takes shape when the girls don their bathing suits and display the form divine. Miss Universe of Bangkok, Thailand is a guest of honor. The judges choose Miss California, Maria Judith Remenyi, the first brunette in 5 years to win the contest. Runner-up Pat Den, Miss Connecticut, gives a congratulatory hug. And last year's Miss USA, Sue Ann Downey, crowns the new queen, who is a native of Hungary. Miss Remenyi is a junior at the University of California, majoring in physics, and she hopes to get her doctorate and do research in high-energy physics. She speaks 4 languages. Beautiful Miss USA competes in July for the Miss Universe title. The most fabulous baseball players of all time becomes the highest paid player in history. Willie Mays signs a 2-year contract that will bring him an estimated $130,000 a year. Willie has larceny in his heart. When he reaches first, he can steal second against the best of pitchers. And when a ball is hit to center field, when he's on patrol, watch out. He never drops anything but his cap. The Smiling Willie has been called one of the greatest natural hitters to come down the pike in decades. Now he has hit the biggest home run in baseball's financial records. No one deserves it more. Racing's greatest day begins. The golden anniversary of America's most famous auto race, the Indianapolis 500 Classic. The crowd of 225,000 fills every available inch in the stands and in the infield. The moment of truth as the pace car leads a field of 33 of the best racing machines in the world, driven by men who comprise the international who's who of auto racing. Pace car up to 90 miles an hour prepares to leave the track. The green flag signals acceleration, and the incredible occurs. Billy Foster of Canada jockeys for position, passes on the inside, almost climbs out of Gordon John Cox's car, loses control and hits the wall, setting off the worst chain reaction accident in Indianapolis history. 14 cars are involved, 11 damaged beyond repair as they slam into one another and snap delicate steering systems. The track is filled with flying wheels and other auto parts. Miraculously, no serious injuries reported by drivers or spectators. A.J. Foyt, who climbed the fence, Dan Gurney, Gary Congdon, and Don Branson are among the leading drivers whose race this year lasted only 10 seconds. The red flags are out, and the track is alive with firemen, ambulances, officials, and pit crews. Later, the race is restarted with the survivors in single file this time instead of 3 abreast. Another driver smacks into the wall as mishaps continue to plague this classic. A loose wheel causes more danger as drivers going at speeds of more than 150 miles an hour are forced to swerve to avoid this erratic path. Only 7 cars remain on the track, the lowest number ever. Number 24, Graham Hill of London, leads number 19, Jim Clark of Dun, Scotland. The checkered flag ends it. Hill the winner, Clark second, Jim McElrath of Arlington, Texas, third. Graham Hill, the soft-spoken former clockmaker with a close-trimmed mustache, becomes the richest rookie in auto racing history, winning over $156,000. Hill takes the Classic 500 on his first try. Hollywood show of the year is here. It's Oscar night, and those lucky enough to have seats peer around the house to detect the contenders for awards. There's excitement when Julie Andrews announces the Best Actor. And here he is, Lee Marvin. While the applause is deafening, the award comes as a surprise to some. There has been little to indicate that the famous cop of screen and television was in consideration. The enthusiasm of the professional people of Hollywood for Marvin's success is especially noticeable. He is not only a top actor, but a regular guy in the judgment of his co-workers. Now, Rex Harrison has the honor of announcing the Best Actress. She is Julie Christie, an English star, truly a blonde bombshell. The idea of winning the Golden Oscar overwhelms her, and she's visibly affected by her emotions. That she beat all Hollywood competition obviously does not dampen the honor of the American film colony's approval. She receives an acclamation. Jack Lemmon goes the distinction of making the award for one of the most coveted Oscars of the night, that for Best Picture of the Year, Sound of Music. A producer's representative accepted the award as the gala Hollywood night reaches its climax. The first gold medal, not an Oscar, ever awarded by the Motion Picture Academy was made to Bob Hope. He is the star-studded night's master of ceremonies. The honor recognizes the fact that Bob is the uncrowned king of the film industry. The celebrated quipper even had a quip for this occasion. "I'm caught with my idiot cards down," he said. The Manhattan home of great voices and big diamonds is staging its last show. From crowds thronging the street and brilliantly dressed women entering the lobby, it's difficult to realize that wrecking crews follow in a few days, and the Metropolitan Opera House will be no more. Constructed 82 years ago, there's little change in the 5 semicircular balconies or tiers from the Golden Horseshoe up through the family circle. Backstage are many of the famous singers who have sung in well-known operas. On stage, 57 opera singers are in the spotlight. They command outstanding applause from fellow stars and an appreciative packed house in which there are 100 standees. The great height above the stage is revealed by a view from the rafters, the same rafters that Caruso made vibrate. The good side of the news is that the Metropolitan Opera Company has already found a new home in Lincoln Center. Population milestone is reached in the nation's capital, where President Johnson speaks as census clocks record a birth every 8.5 seconds. Finally, the clocks indicate a U.S. population of 200 million Americans. Experts predict it'll go to 300 million by the year 2000.
While the census clock showed the increase in population, across the world, the war was taking a heavy toll. Vietnam became the place where death was a way of life.
The largest offensive to date by South Vietnamese and American troops forces thousands of peasants to move from the so-called Iron Triangle of the Mekong Delta. 4 entire villages have to be relocated. This region has been a prime recruiting area for the Viet Cong guerrillas. It's the most important center of communist power in the South. but now it will become uninhabitable. The refugees with their belongings are transported to special camps, while Operation Cedar Falls continues to sweep through their former villages in a giant mop-up, which devastates the Viet Cong stronghold. But families continue their daily routines in their new homes, filled with hope that one day they'll be able to return to their villages and their crops.
But the rest of the world was not prepared to ignore the crisis. Protests were mounted as people of all persuasions sat in judgment of the United States involvement.
Anti-war demonstrators protest U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War in mass marches, rallies, and demonstrations. Organized by the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, mimics of Queen Elizabeth presented mock medals and said the war was a wicked obscenity. Madrid University, scene of the largest anti-American rally in recent years. Posters, leaflets, slogans, and student speeches all carried a vehemence seldom seen here before. Some 3,000 undergraduates attended. An American flag is burned at the height of the demonstration. Both President Johnson and Francisco Franco were vilified. A new low in public protest, added strain on Spanish-American relations. Central Park is the starting point for the parade to the UN building. The estimated 125,000 Manhattan marchers include students, housewives, beatnik poets, doctors, businessmen, teachers, priests, and nuns. Before the parade, mass draft card burning was urged. Demonstrators claimed 200 cards were burned, but no accurate count could be determined. Reporters and onlookers were jostled away on purpose. Although mostly peaceful, shouted confrontations were frequent and fiery during the course of the march. The anti-war marchers were picketed by anti-war marchers who were hawkish toward the parading doves. Civil rights leader Martin Luther King leads the procession to the United Nations, where he urges UN pressure to force the U.S. to stop bombing North Vietnam. Police arrested 5 persons as disorderly. 3 were grabbed when they rushed the parade float. No serious injuries, however, in New York's biggest anti-war march. A companion peace demonstration brings out 50,000 marchers in downtown San Francisco. They parade 2 miles along Market Street, pacifists and hippies together. Gigantic Kezar Stadium holds the mass rally, where anti-war songs and speeches trigger a short scuffle between pro and con factions. No one was injured. Both demonstrations were sponsored by a loose coalition of left-wing, pacifist, and moderate anti-war groups. President Johnson, meanwhile, let it be known that the FBI is closely watching all anti-war activity. Race riots since those 2 years ago in the Watts section of Los Angeles rocked New Jersey's largest city, Newark, for 5 consecutive days and nights. At least 24 persons are killed, more than 1,800 wounded, some 1,400 arrested. Despite patrolling by city and state police, millions of dollars in property damage is done. Looters wreck and clean out scores of shops in the Negro ghetto district. The fury of the mob makes any official-looking vehicle a target. 2 days after its beginning, police are augmented by National Guardsmen. Snipers make the streets a battlefield. Governor Hughes terms the rioting open rebellion, just like wartime. Sniper fire from open windows kills 2 policemen, a fire captain shot in the back while answering a false alarm, and several bystanders. Scores of police, troopers, guardsmen, and civilians are wounded. Officials said the snipers, some believed not to be Newark residents, used guns stolen from a local rifle factory. Even machine guns were used. President Johnson, using firm words, urges the nation's citizens to support the maintenance of law and order.
I know that the vast majority of Negroes and whites are shocked and are outraged by them. Pillage, looting, murder, and arson have nothing to do with civil rights. They are criminal conduct. Your president calls upon all of our people in all of our cities to join in a determined program to maintain law and order, to condemn and to combat lawlessness in all of its forms, and firmly to show by word and by deed that riots, looting, and public disorder will just not be tolerated.
Because of widespread looting, 8 emergency food centers are set up to supply milk, bread, and cereal to besieged and terrorized residents. Looters arrested by National Guardsmen are dealt with swiftly. A 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew is clamped on fully 1/3 of Newark. While Newark struggles to restore peace and order, the racial bitterness spreads to 4 nearby suburban towns, where a policeman is beaten to death, guns are stolen, looting and violence are reported. New Jersey, a state under siege. War in the Middle East. Israeli forces drive spearheads across the Sinai Peninsula, west to the Suez Canal, south to the entrance of the Gulf of Aqaba, breaking the blockade, capturing the west bank of the Jordan River, and occupying the old city of Jerusalem. Israel's new defense minister, General Moshe Dayan, hero of the 1956 Sinai campaign, was instrumental in mapping his nation's battle plan. The sudden swiftness of the Israeli army crushed UAR forces with a combined air and ground 1-2 punch. Egypt's charges that U.S. and British air units aided Israel are vigorously denied, while diplomatic relations are broken. Efforts toward a ceasefire continue at the United Nations. U.S. Ambassador Arthur Goldberg introduces the peace plan. An immediate debate is started in the Security Council representing 15 nations. The vote is finally taken and the resolution adopted unanimously. Word continues to come from the battle zone, telling of sweeping Israeli victories. Next day, Egypt accepts the UN ceasefire, joining Jordan. This left Syria facing Israeli forces alone. The United Nations arena remains in the world spotlight because of the many questions raised by the short but decisive Middle East war. With Israel now controlling the Sinai Peninsula, all approaches to the Suez Canal, Old Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and the Gulf of Aqaba, the diplomatic struggle now begins. Apollo astronauts Roger Chaffee, Edward White, and Gus Grissom lose their lives in a tragic flash fire aboard their grounded space capsule. The tragedy occurred during a simulated countdown for the first flight of the Apollo program, whose goal is to put a man on the moon by 1970. When the tragedy struck, one of the astronauts shouted, "Fire in the spacecraft!" In a few seconds, all 3 were victims of the swift inferno which left the capsule a blackened shell. One reporter said it looked like the inside of a furnace. Investigators theorize that perhaps a short circuit or electrical overload may have sparked the blaze. 27 would-be rescuers were all overcome by smoke and heat. Apollo astronauts Chaffee, White, and Grissom, martyred heroes who gave their lives in total dedication to duty. Their memory will forever be honored. Outside the district court building in the nation's capital, Teamster boss James Hoffa surrenders to U.S. Marshals to begin serving an 8-year prison term for jury tampering. With his raincoat covering handcuffs, Hoffa arrives at federal prison in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. He said his attorneys would continue his fight while he's in jail. Parole is possible in 32 months. At $100,000 annually, he's the nation's highest paid prisoner. George Lincoln Rockwell, leader of the American Nazi Party, meets a violent end, murdered by a sniper's bullet in a Virginia shopping center not far from his headquarters. Suburban Arlington is the scene of the shooting, and the sniper's perch was the roof of a coin-operated laundry. Rockwell's accused killer is a former member of his extremist group. Eyewitnesses said Rockwell slumped in his car after 2 shots crashed through the windshield. He was a former Navy pilot and founded the Nazi group in 1959.
LBJ, His world of family life, down-home barbecues, and traditional values were fast changing. He tried to keep up, but his generation was just a bit out of step. Nonetheless, he gave it a good try.
They read about the alienated young radicals and the rootless, disillusioned young people with long hair and short skirts. Well, that doesn't scare me. I've just lived through several years with teenage girls in this house, and it hadn't affected me one bit. I've kept my cool. I haven't bugged out. I'm still in Fat City.
LBJ's happiest moment in office was the marriage of his daughter Linda. She chose as her husband Marine Captain Charles Robb, and their ceremony was as traditional as could be. Double rings, white gown, maids of honor, and crossed swords. However, some of her generation did things a bit differently.
Here come the brides, a whole platoon of them, ready for the first mass wed-in at Brooklyn's Prospect Park. The lucky bridegrooms, some of them bearded, are also ready for the public taking of marriage vows. Criminal Court Judge Amos Basil presides, marrying the 9 couples before a huge crowd. The mass ceremony was the idea of park officials who called it a lovely occasion. The happy couples had everything from tuxedos and gowns to honeymoons supplied free by various Brooklyn department stores. Now maybe they'll have to change the song to Get Me to the Park on Time.
Elvis Presley weds Priscilla Ann Boliodu, and one of America's richest teenage singing idols promises to love, honor, and obey. The couple first met in Germany. Both are Memphis natives, and Elvis, 32, gave Priscilla Ann, 22, a wedding ring with 21 diamonds. Why did the pelvis desert bachelorhood? Said he, it's about time. Days of world premiere events for Universal's The War Wagon, starring John Wayne and Kirk Douglas. What a welcome. Duke Wayne arrives and makes an instant hit with a huge crowd of celebrity watchers. Laura Nolan, featured in the film, makes a beautiful appearance, adding to the glamour and glitter of this major premiere. Joanna Barnes, also featured in The War Wagon, decorates the premiere, while the film's director, Burt Kennedy, explains the plot line of this big-budget Technicolor Western, which tells of the forerunners of today's armored cars and tanks. Fort Worth joins in this precedent-setting Twin City doubleheader premiere with the spotlight on the Worth Theater and John Wayne. Indian dancers add authentic atmosphere as both Dallas and Fort Worth lay aside city rivalry to welcome the opening of one of the year's major outdoor adventure films, Universal's The War Wagon. One-time child movie star Shirley Temple Black announces her candidacy for Congress to fill the vacancy caused by the death of Representative J. Arthur Younger. She adds she'll run as a Republican independent, and her announcement includes a strong attack on the Johnson administration. In the 30s, the curly-haired, dimpled child actress captured the heart of America and the world with her pixie-like charm. Her smiles, tears, dancing, and singing brought her fame and wealth. Today, the 39-year-old mother of 3 sets out to join 2 other former stars in politics, Governor Ronald Reagan and Senator George Murphy.
Beauties on parade in Convention Hall, Atlantic City, during the oldest contest of its kind and the one with the most prestige, the search for Miss America. She must be stunning in a swimsuit or an evening gown and have talent, too. The winner, Deborah Dean Barnes, 20-year-old Miss Kansas, a future piano teacher. Lessons, anyone?
These girls have shown up for a heavy audition date. Scale busters all, the chubby charmers hope to be chosen for an upcoming show saluting the famous beef truss gals, elephantine beauties who sang and danced. A series of soft shoe routines test the techniques of the heavyweights, who are surprisingly light on their feet. Some display large fringe benefits from top to bottom. Ads which eliminated those under 200 pounds drew some 20 tons of hefty hoofers. Wow. A royal reception for Britain's top mini model, whose professional name is Twiggy, real name Leslie Hornby. The 17-year-old Cockney girl is accompanied by her boyfriend manager, Justin de Villeneuve, who fielded most of the reporters' questions. Not exactly voluptuous, Twiggy stands 5 feet 6 inches and weighs 91 pounds. Her measurements 31, 22, 32. Her two fondest wishes to meet Cassius Clay and visit Disneyland. At the Bochum Planetarium, an observatory station in West Germany, designers show futuristic space-oriented fashions suitable for the best-dressed ladies in the year 2000. It really doesn't matter where the lady establishes residence. These styles presumably will be in on the Moon, Mars, Venus, or even that quaint old-fashioned planet, Earth. Her jumbo earrings to her tiny feet, this charmer displays what might be the perfect casual outfit for catching the weekend rocket shuttle to visit friends in any of the outer space suburbs. Seems like a real fun crowd. Looks like there's a method in their modness. The first Super Bowl game puts the Packers against the Chiefs. First quarter, Packers ball. After a 6-play, 80-yard march, quarterback Bart Starr connects to Max McGee, and Green Bay is first on the scoreboard. Kansas City stays in the game on the arm of Len Dawson. With good protection, he hits Otis Taylor on the Green Bay 6. Dawson rallying his AFL champions from behind, passes to Curtis McClinton for the tying touchdown, 7-all. Before the half, the Packers' power on the ground shows itself. Star running back Jim Taylor, behind good blocking, sweeps his left end to score. At the half, Green Bay 14, Kansas City 10, after Mike Mercer kicked a field goal for the Chiefs. This first meeting between the champs of the NFL and the AFL produces plenty of thrills. The turning point in the game. A Packer blitz forces Dawson to rush his throw. Willie Wood kicks it off and gallops all the way to the Chiefs' 5-yard line, where Mike Garrett makes a touchdown-saving tackle. But the Packers can't be stopped. Elijah Pitts takes it over and puts Green Bay out in front, 21-10. Starr to McGee touchdown pass. The Chiefs bound to the Packers 35-10. A super debut for the Super Bowl. The close heavyweight champion Cassius Clay at a federal court in Houston is found guilty of violating the U.S. Selective Service laws by refusing to be inducted. He is sentenced to 5 years in prison and fined $10,000, the maximum penalty for the offense, which is a felony. The sentence was appealed by Clay's lawyers. Clay contended his status as a black Muslim minister made him exempt from the draft. Released on bail, he faces a possible 18-month wait for an appeal decision.
speed daredevil Donald Campbell attempts to break the world's water speed record at Lake Coniston, England. His powerful gas turbine hydroplane Bluebird hurtles across the water surface at close to 300 miles an hour. At this record speed, tragedy strikes. Campbell's boat literally takes off, flips into the air, then crashes and explodes. Later, divers recovered only his helmet, shoes, and oxygen mask. Campbell once held both land and water speed records and was attempting to break his old record when death stopped him.
Death, however, was cheated by this man. Louis Washansky became the world's first heart transplant after submitting to Dr. Christian Bernard's radical new procedure. It forecast a brighter future for the elderly, but apparently some people had their own health secrets.
Meet Shirley Mislamoff, probably the world's oldest man. This mountain villager claims to be 163, and he credits hard work and a simple life for his longevity. The Caspian Sea region has dozens of centenarians. His third wife, Katun, is a mere child of 80, a rare May-December romance indeed. Shirley believes the surrounding mountains are so high, the angel of death cannot reach him. A teetotaler and tobacco abstainer, Shirley's advice is a simple, direct philosophy. He says families, neighbors, and nations should be good to each other. Wisdom of the ages.